Hey folks, how you doing today? So today is Thursday. We are going to be going over the next bit of information that we need to learn. Last chapter we introduced you to the loops concept, when and how we use them and the importance behind them. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be discussing lists and why a list is important and what really is a list. So with that being said, we're going to go into App Inventor. We're going to create a quiz application. The purpose of this application is just that. We're going to create like a sample, like a quiz review program, so that people who are using this program can, answer or either self-check or whatever the case may be based on the information that you input into it. All right, and so we're going to create this the user interface is going to be very simplistic just for saving time. We're going to have three areas: a third of the screen, top, middle, and bottom. The top area of the screen, the purpose of it is so that we have the question that we need displayed. The middle part of the screen is where we're going to use a list picker, which is going to sort of like take us to a brand new window, and you're going to have a list of items that we're going to be able to choose from. And then the bottom portion of the screen is going to be a next button that's going to allow us to cycle through the next question. And we're also going to add a notifier, and we'll click on that and just drag it on here now. And the purpose of the notifier is to allow us to pop up a message to let the individual know if the question that they select is correct or not. All right, so let's start off first let's go to Layout, and let's grab the horizontal arrangements. So I'm going to do 3 horizontal arrangements just back to back to back. Just drop them in like so. And then what I'll do after I add them in, I'll now go in and I'll adjust the parameters, or the properties, I should say, of each. So all I'm going to do is on the height and the width, I'm going to choose fill parent on both, just so that it spans horizontally and vertically. Because eventually when I do that to all 3 of these, what's going to happen is it's going to scale things equidistant from each other. So we should have 3 equal lengths and widths of my fill parent, or height and width, I should say. All right, and so there's our 3 arrangements. Like I said, the very top portion up here is I'm going to place my label so that I can display the question that I want to. So I'm going to go under User Interface, and let me grab a label, and let's drop that into this arrangement. And with it already being highlighted, let me go over here, and I'm just going to adjust the height and the width to fill parent as well. So it'll give us the entire arrangement to ask our question if we needed to. And lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this text for label 1. Because I don't want it to show that. Though if you leave it in there, it'll be fine, because when we start the program, it's going to automatically display the question that we need it to. Just for saving time as well, I'm not going to adjust the names or anything over here, though it's good practice, obviously, that you should do that. So that's the top third. The middle third is going to be my list picker. And so let me click on this, and let me plug that in here. And as I mouse over this, no, it's not doing that. Click on, there we go. So when we click on the question mark over here, it's going to allow us, it's going to provide us the information that we need to show, what a list picker is about. It'll tell us a little bit about the properties of the list picker, on the right-hand side over here, and what its purpose and intended function is. So I'm going to click on my list picker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the height and the width. I'm just going to choose fill parent so that this button, because it acts like a button, it just spans the entire area there. Just so that people know that I need to click on that to get my choices. And then I'm going to get rid of text for list picker 1, and I'm going to choose, I'm going to right click here to select choice. All right, so the people know that that's what they need to do. And lastly, what I'm going to do in the bottom section over here, I'm going to grab a button. I'm going to drop a button into the bottom. And then let's get rid of this text for button 1. And we'll just type in the word next, so people know that's a next button. And then the height and the width, let's do a fill parent on the height so it spans all the way to the bottom. And a width, why don't we just choose, let's just choose 150 pixels. All right, so we're not going to have the whole button span across like the list picker so that it's not too confusing for people, but we'll have it enough so that they can distinguish the difference between the two. All right, so that is all I'm going to do for my user interface. Very simple, nothing much to it. So now what I want to do is I want to go over to my blocks and let's start putting this together. So the way how the list works is I need to generate or put information into this list. So when I click on this list block on the left side over here, all right, I got a whole bunch of options to choose from. But there's two in question here, and let me just pull these out. We'll only use one of them. But just to explain the difference between the two. We got one block that says create empty list and the other one that says make a list. So for this one, because we are going to create a quiz app that's going to have pre-populated items, all right, this is the block down here that I'm going to choose. And it's going to have inputs, that I need. So to add more inputs, because I want to have 4 in total, I want to click on this little blue cogwheel, and I want to drag and drop, these items within this little widget here. So as you can see, whenever I drop a new item, it increases the input by another number, similar to the other blocks. We've done that too. The create empty list is something that we're going to do. Let's just say you're creating a program like a shopping list program or a to-do list program, and you want the individual to create add and then add inputs into that list. Well, you're then going to start the list off as create empty list because initially it's not expecting any inputs, because we couldn't use this one initially because it would be expecting an input, and if we don't apply an input, then it's going to yell at us saying, where's your input? But if we start with an empty list, which will allow it then to build, and we do that by choosing this add item to list. Every single time someone goes into their program and clicks add, and we want to add groceries to our list or to-dos to our list, all right, by selecting that add item to list, we'll be able to grow this empty list into a sizable list. Though these really are the same block, as you can see when I click on this modifier, if I add an item to this list, okay, this goes from a empty list to now a make a list like we have down here with the appropriate input. All right, so let me just chuck that for now because I don't need that because this is what I'm going to be working with. So think of a list as a bucket, all right? So we're going to be able to store information into this bucket, but the benefit of using a list is that it is ordered, all right? Which means that the information, unlike water or sand where you just dump it into a bucket and it just scatters everywhere, it would be like taking books and sliding books into a bucket so that you can see the binding and you can basically read it, and you can then organize them by alphabetical order or whatever you want to call it. All right, so it's a way that we can organize information into a place holding matrix, I guess, if you will. So, but as you can see with the list over here, all right, you can't just use this standalone. You have to apply this or plug this into something else. And so this is where variables come into play. And a list is like a variable because a variable stores information into it, and a list stores data inputs into it. But this list needs to basically plug into something else to assign it to, and that's what we use variables for. So what I have to do initially, again, whenever I use a variable, I have to initialize a variable. So I'm going to click on this initial global, pull it aside, and then I'm going to take this item here and I'm going to plug it into that variable there. And as you can see, there's 4 inputs that I need. So what I'm going to do just first, I'm just going to grab these 4 inputs, and then I'm just going to plug them in. I'm just going to right-click and duplicate 3 more times. Oh, wrong one. I don't want to add a comment. I want to duplicate. And then I'm going to plug these individually in here. So the reason why I kind of put this together quickly, because I ultimately need a few of these lists. When you think of it, if I'm creating a program, a quiz program, I want to create a list that's going to have questions. If I have questions, I need to have answers, so I need to create a separate list for that. And I need to create a third list, which is going to give me the options. So if I'm creating a quiz app and I want to give a multiple choice quiz, all right, I'm going to then create a third list that is going to offer the proper choices to choose. All right, so I'm going to need 3 of these. So now that I kind of put a generic one together, let me just duplicate this 2 more times so I have my 3 lists in question. All right, so the first one, I'm going to not use name. I'm just going to generically, I'm just going to call this Q because that's going to be my question list. My second one is my answer list, so I'm going to generically call it A. And then my bottom one here is my third list, and I'm going to generically call it choice. And the choice is going to be the options that are going to be within my list picker. This is going to look a little bit differently, though, and I'll explain when we get there. But for right now, let's kind of just fill this out quick. So the question, I'm going to, again, for sake of time, I'm just going to keep this very generic. So I got to create 4 unique questions, and I'm going to type them in this block over here. So the first one, I'll say, what is the color of the sky? The next one over here, I will say, what animal barks? Down here, we'll say, what is 1 plus 1? And let's just say, what is the first letter in the English alphabet? All right, so those are my 4 questions. And again, when I input the questions, I have to have the corresponding answers. And so this is where indexing comes into place, the word indexing. The indexing really just references what space or what place you are within your line, or within your list over here. So index 1 would correspond to the first input on this list. Then it will just, and then by order, just goes top to bottom. Input 1, input 2, input 3, and input 4, which corresponds to index 1, index 2, index 3, and index 4. This index 1, what we want to do is we want it to match with this index 1 over here. So we want to make sure that the question that's in the first input here is going to match the answer of the first input over here. So what is the color of the sky? So what we're going to do is we're going to type in, type in the word blue here. So what animal barks? We'll put a dog over here. 1 plus 1, the value 2, so we'll put a 2 there. And then the first letter in the alphabet we'll say is the letter A, all right? And so there we have our answers. And so as you can see, what we want is to make sure that spot 1 matches with answer 1. Spot 2 matches with answer 2, and so on and so forth. The next thing we have to do is we have to put together our initial global choice list. All right, now, if you think about it, we need to create a list of 4 items. So these 4 items would, because again, each multiple choice question usually has an A, B, C, D. So we need to make sure that we have 4 inputs to account for that one question. But the problem is that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. So ultimately, what I'm going to need to do in this scenario is I have to create a list of lists, meaning I need to have a list of 4 inputs for index 1 or question 1. I need to have 4 inputs for question number 2. I need to have another 4 inputs or options to choose from for question number 3, and I need to have another 4 inputs or options for question number 4. All right, so we need to have a total of 16 options to choose from. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go back under my list here, and I'm going to choose make a list. And I just want to adjust this like I did over here because, again, our list has 4 inputs because there's 4 questions in total. So I'm going to use this new block over here as my main list block, and I'm going to plug it in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then plug in the sub-lists into this main list, which represents my choice or the options that are within my list picker. So each one is going to go into its corresponding input. All right, so like I said, this is called a list of lists. So ultimately, excuse me, is that question 1, which is index 1, all right, we want this to match with index 1 within our answer list. We want this also, these 2, 1 and 1, to match with the sublist of options within my choice list. And again, remember, this one right up here, this input is my first input or my first index. And so therefore, we want this first index of these 4 options, 1, 2, 3, and 4, to match with question 1 and answer 1. So being that the answer 1 for question 1 is blue, I want to use one of these 4, 1, 2, 3, or 4 options here. I want to make sure that the answer appears in one of those options. So I'm just going to just randomly select the third here and just type in blue. We're going to repeat the process for the next 4 blocks. So index 2, all right, corresponds to this index right here. The second one has to be dog. So I'm going to randomly choose, and I'll choose the top one. I'll put dog there. Index 3, all right, which is this one down here. So I have to randomly choose one of these 4, and it has to be the number 2. So I'm going to use the bottom, plug in a 2. And then index 4, which is the letter A, corresponds to the bottom sublist here. And I need to have the answer in one of these. So I'll just choose the second one, and I'll plug in an A there. So those are the corresponding correct answers in each subset of 4. What I need to do is just basically fill in the rest of the information with just bogus answers. All right, so we'll choose brown, choose green, and we'll throw in yellow. We have dog, throw in cat, bird, oops, and cow. The next one we'll have throw in a 5, a 1, 7, and then we'll do the letters here, do B, D, Z. All right, so at each subset of 4 has 1 correct answer and then 3 wrong answers. All right, so this will now, like I said, when we get the indexing worked out, this will then allow us to match the question 1 with the answer 1 with the sublist 1 with all the appropriate responses, which obviously the correct one would be the blue right here. So, like I said, but the problem is that with App Inventor, it doesn't do this automatically. What we need to do is we need to point it to the proper index so that, all these things sort of sync together. And in order to do that, what we need to do is create one more variable. So we'll do initialize global, and we're going to call this one index. And I'm going to go into my math tab here and grab this integer 0, plug that in. But I want to change it from 0 to 1 because in App Inventor, when it comes to indexing, App Inventor always indexes the lists or any information at the first place, at number 1. Other programming languages like C or Java, Swift, or anything, they always index, they start at 0. All right, App Inventor is one of the few languages that starts at 1. Don't know why they chose 1 instead of 0, but that's what they chose, so we have to make sure that we're pointing to the proper space, because 0 would not be pointing here. 0 would be off pointing to nowhere, basically. And it wouldn't know what to do. It wouldn't populate the proper questions or answers or anything. So we have to make sure that it points to 1. So in the code, when we continue to write, all right, we're going to be able to call index, and it's going to allow us to point to the proper space in line, and then we'll pull the correct information out of all my lists over here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to go back to the designer here. The next thing we have to focus on is when I click on this list picker here. When I click on it right now, a new screen will pop up. All right, nothing will be in there though. But what we need to do now is we need to populate these choices within my list picker. So let's go under my list picker and let's see what we got over here. All right, we got a couple event handlers and we got a built-in procedure. We also have some set and get functions as well. So the 2 in question that we're going to be focusing on is after picking and before picking. We're not going to worry too much about, how we interact with the items on the list. We just want to know what we need to do before we pick the item and what we need to do after we choose the item. So I'm going to click on both of these and drag them out because I'm going to be using both of them. And so, again, the names pretty much speak for themselves. The moment I choose list picker, so before I choose or pick the options, the elements within my list, what do I need to do? Well, I need to display those elements. I need to display this information in here. All right, so that's the first thing I want to do is I want to display that information. And I kind of already gave it away, unfortunately, by saying it, but I'm using the word elements. So you might say, well, how do I display the proper information? Well, the questions are text, so you might want to think about going down and selecting the set text. All right, but this is going to be the set text. It's not going to be focusing on the text that we want. Well, in App Inventor with list pickers, the items that are stored within a list are referred to as elements. All right, so what we want to do is we want to set the elements or the numbers, of items that we're going to plug into our list, not just the text in general. So I want to choose on this list picker one.elements, and I want to plug that into my before picking here. Well, so what do I want to populate? All right, well, I want to populate the options I get to choose from. All right, and the options are within this list called choice, and then with the proper index, I can point to the spot that I need. So I want to select this list right here. So let me go back under my list and let me see if there's anything in here. And sure enough, I can see it right there, but it's like the 9th or 8th or whatever one down. We have the select list item. That's the one that I'm going to want to use. So I'm going to click on this, and then I want to plug that into my before picking here. All right, so we have two inputs that are within this block over here. We've got select list item, and we have index. All right, so the index obviously is what we're going to, it's going to allow us to point to the proper space or the proper place that we need it to by using index. And the select list item list input is going to point to the proper list, whether it be the choice, the A, or the Q. All right, so with that being said, I want to make sure that I point it to the proper place in line. And so I'm just going to mouse over index, and I'm going to select this get global index, and I'm going to plug that into where it says index right there. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm pointing it to the proper list, and because I need to populate all these choices there, I want to mouse over this choice, and I'm going to do get global choice, and I'm going to plug that into the list over here. So this is going to point us to the proper list, and then whatever the value of the index is. So initially we start at 1, so that means it's pointing to this list right here. It's then going to point to the first index, which is right here, and then I'm going to select all the items that are within this list, which will be these 4 right here, and then populate the elements within my list. I'm going to just do a one test at the end, just to try to save some time, just so that I don't run this up to over an hour video. I will need to post 2 videos though, so this will be part 1. So that being said, that is what we have for populating. Well, once I populate the information, I now need to do something with it after I choose the question in that I have in mind, or the option, I should say. And, well, what I want to do is I want to determine if the option that the individual chose is the correct answer or not. All right, so if I choose the, place 1, 2, 3, or 4, will that return a correct answer? So being that this becomes a conditional check, right, there's some if-else logic that I'm going to have to use and apply within this program. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under control, and I'm going to grab me an if-then-else. Because ultimately, I'm going to do conditional check. If the choice is equal to the answer within the list here, then display a message correct. Or if it's obviously not correct, well, then it's wrong. So then I want to display a message that says wrong. And to do that, remember, I selected a notifier. So I'm just going to use the notifier to let the people know. So on the left-hand side here, let's go under notifier, and let's grab the show alert notice. And let's click on that, and let's plug this in, duplicate that. All right, and so the notice that I want to give is nothing more than just a text message or string. Whoops. All right, click on this, and let's drag, and let's plug that in here, and let's duplicate that. So we plug that in the bottom here. And I'm just going to, again, just be very generic, and then I'm going to type in the word correct if it equals, and I'll type in wrong, excuse me, if it does not. All right, so that is what I want to display. Now I just need to figure out the condition to make sure if it's correct or not. So again, let me go back into my list picker here. The elements are the items that I want to populate within my list. But now if we scroll down a little bit, we have something that's called the selection. And the selection specifically refers to when I choose an item within that list, when I choose an element, that element, I'm selecting that element, so it's going to return a value of the selection of the choice that I chose. So we don't want to set the selection. We want to return the value that I just clicked on. So I want to use the get function for here. And remember, we're not just plugging in the get selection value here. We're comparing, is the selection value that I chose equal to the correct answer? So, right, so there's an equal statement here that I need. So I'm going to, being that there's no math, this is all more wording, I'm just going to use the logic over here, and I'm going to grab the green equal block. Though if you use the math equal block, it'll work just as fine. So I'm going to choose that one, and then what I want to do is I want to compare, put this one in my first input, the selection choice that I chose in list picker, is that equal to the information that is within this global list A or answer. And it just so happens that the information or the format of what we're going to need is going to look very similar to what we have here for before picking. So I'm just going to actually right click and I'm going to duplicate this bit of code and plug this in. The one thing I have to be careful though is I just got to verify, am I pointing to the correct list? Right now, because I just copied this is pointing to the choice list here. I don't want to compare it to the choices, I want to compare it to the answers. So all I'm going to have to do is click on this little arrow here and choose global A, which is my answer list, and then leave it at that. Because now what's going to happen is it's going to properly point to the answer list up here. And so in question 1, it's asking what color is the sky, and then it's going to return the options brown, green, blue, or yellow. When I choose blue, all right, so blue is the selection I chose. Is blue equal to the information found in global list A, right, at the index 1? So if blue equals blue, well then I got the correct answer, and therefore it's going to display the information correct. If I chose brown, and then brown does not equal blue, so then it will skip over this and it should show the answer as wrong. All right, so one other thing that we need to factor in as well is that when I start the program, because I deleted the text here, nothing's going to show. All right, and I want to make sure that when I start the program, initially it displays the correct information. So to do that, I'm going to go into screen 1, and we've already done this in a few other programs. What I want to use is I want to use a screen1.initialize. So I'm going to click on this, and let me drag that out. And again, I want to display the proper questioning. All right, so again, it's very similar to what we have over here. So again, we used a label in that first third area there because that's going to display my question. So when I click on label, I'm going to grab the set label 1.text, and I'm going to plug that into here. And what do I want to display? Well, I want to display the proper question. So again, just like I did before, I'm going to select this and duplicate and plug this into here. And what I want to do is, I don't want it to point to global choice now. I want to point it to global question list. And then global index. What I want to do to be on the safe side is I'm going to actually duplicate this 1, and I'm going to plug the number 1 in here. And just because it's on startup, I always want to make sure it's pointing to the first question. All right, so let me take a pause there. This will wrap up vid 1. I shouldn't be too much longer, so I'm going to make another video too because I got to keep it under 30 minutes each video. But I'll see you in the next one.